My name's Nat, you're all exceptional individuals, and welcome to our Thursday's webinars. Today we are purely focusing on ADHD, though actually we are going to be talking a little bit about autism today, just because they tend to do a better job at representation as of late, and I will be talking a bit about that. Here's a TED Talk, as I always share. You can like, subscribe, and click it. Just type "Why We Need Neurodiversity." Nat Hawley, that is my official title. Our introduction is we're going to be exploring how TV has shaped our views of ADHD. Half the reason we do these webinars is because people have learned outdated misconceptions. We're going to be looking at portrayals, stereotypes, accurate times, and how the media drives and stigmatizes, and how we might be able to create better empathy. I did start off doing loads of GIFs because I thought, oh, they're fun again. But then I remembered I had loads of complaints. I will be keeping the GIFs to a minimum, but we have a creepy Bart with no muscles at the moment. My first question to all of you, what words come to mind when you think of ADHD? I'll be curious to know, do these actually relate to fact, or do they relate to what we have been spoon-fed through the media through many repetitive years? Okay, we got boys. Yep, unfortunately, massive misconception. Anxiety, hyperfocus, ditzy. Yep, that's one that we'll see time and time again. Bouncing around all over the place, hyper, creative, fast, distracted, misbehaving. Yep, absolutely. Okay, wow. I would say struggling to focus. A lot of these probably, let's face it, come from TV. I'm not saying that they're not true, but they are like one tiny little piece of the massive jigsaw puzzle. There are many more characteristics that go along with it. However, a lot of these things aren't actually key characteristics. Which one is not the key symptom of ADHD? Okay, I think we got a lot of people are agreeing here. Anxiety, yes. Inattentive is a key characteristic. Impulsivity and hyperactivity, though they don't necessarily have to have all of them, but one of them will typically count. Anxiety, though, does go along with ADHD, but it doesn't have to. That normally comes as a result of living in this neurotypical world. Let's go back to media. What characters do you think had ADHD traits? For those of you who have come to a few of these, we have done ADHD in pop culture before, but I thought let's narrow it down today just because there are so much representation in TV. So today we're purely focusing on the old box. What characters have you seen on TV that you think had ADHD traits? Who do we think have it and who do we know have it? Why does the media tend not to show it? Rainbow Dash? Not overly familiar. Jake from Brooklyn Nine-Nine? Yep, I could see that. Roadrunner? Yeah, I definitely see that. Lorelei from Gilmore Girls? I've not watched Gilmore Girls, but I have to take your word on that one. Mad Hatter? Yeah, I definitely see that in them. Gilmore Girls, Snooki from the same show, SpongeBob? Yep, SpongeBob I see. Tigger? Yep, Bart Simpson. It's interesting because we will be talking about Bart, but diagnosed with ADHD, but he wasn't up until relatively recent. Phil Dunphy from Modern Family, Horrid Henry. Have you noticed how a lot of these are also characters that typically have naughty behaviour? Barney from How I Met Your Mother. Yep, he was actually also in show diagnosed. Dennis the Menace. Yeah, I always thought Dennis the Menace had it as well. I'm assuming you're talking about the British one, not the American one. I used to love Dennis the Menace. Jessa says also mostly male. Actually, yeah, pretty much. They mostly have behavioural problems as well. Jodie Whittaker's Doctor and Doctor Who. Yes, April, we also will be mentioning that. How well did early cartoons portray ADHD? Do you think they did a good job or a bad job? I would say if it really was all good, we probably wouldn't be doing today. Bart Simpson was the OG influencer. Even long before he had an episode that mentioned ADHD, he had all the traits. Yes, we do have some Whovians here, and we are going to be talking about Doctor Who. One that I want to bring up is one of my favourite cartoons. I literally watch it on repeat. I've seen every episode a billion times, is Bob's Burgers. It's just nice. What I like about Bob's Burger is that I think all three of the Belcher children are neurodivergent. Gene is often seen as gening out, where he loses focus easily and he bops around. I think Tina, the oldest daughter, definitely has autism. And I would also say that the younger daughter, Louise, also has ADHD, but as we see, very different from her male counterpart. Yeah, LaDonna says Tina definitely. I think so. I think Tina is honestly one of my favourite characters of all time, but I also very much like Jean as well. There's also ones like Mr. Peanutbutter from BoJack Horseman. Here's something that I wanted to bring up. He's a dog, right? Of course he's easily distracted because that's a dog characteristic. Often people like to pair dogs with ADHD. They've done it in art, they've done it in many different shows. A little bit degrading, but you'll see often they are pairing us up with distracted animals. Vicky says, I've not seen it, but Jean sounds like my daughter. I recommend it, Vicky. It's a great show. There's a book, All Dogs Have ADHD. Yes, I have heard of that book, though I've not read it. I think, however, in TV, they normally do it as in a negative trope. Fairly Odd Parents, classic. Timmy Turner. He says, I'm Timmy, I'm 10 years old. I have a short attention span, also walks off. This is typically how they display ADHD in the media. It's a one-liner, one joke, bop, we're on to the next thing. And while you get a cheap laugh out of it, it does start cementing the wrong idea. Also, his fairy godparent, Cosmode, I'm not bright. Big words confuse me. I had the attention span of a rodent. See again, they like to make all characters with ADHD typically male, typically a bit dumb, typically a bit ditzy, and kind of one-dimensional. We will be looking at today, how can we change that narrative? And looking at some more progressive cases. Oh, Donna forgot about Mr. Peanutbutter. I think he's a great character. Rita says Bluey. I know of Bluey. I haven't watched much Bluey. The thing is, April says she didn't think Mr. Peanutbutter had ADHD. A lot of the time we do not know. It's more about what we see the traits of. Not everyone will necessarily see it. This is a classic show. I love the show. I don't know if many of you have seen it, but it's called Invader ZIM. And Gur is just like a tiny little critter and always jiggling around. Head's always in the clouds. It's a nice little show. But again, it does show very one-dimensional. Yes, Rita loves Invader ZIM. Looney Tunes, I'm sure you've all seen this. Daffy Duck, again, seen as a little bit of a narcissist. And he's always getting distracted. Very entrepreneurial, I will say. There's an episode where he spots bugs with his Tasmanian devil. And he still gets distracted over 2 times. It's showing that people with ADHD do not learn and they'll make the same mistake time and time again and are typically very self-destructive. Dory from Finding Nemo. Yep, while she does have memory issues, a lot of ADHD traits are definitely overlapped in her. I think it's interesting to see how the characters were demonstrated. But once again, none of these are actually officially mentioned as having ADHD. These are just observed traits, which ultimately is kind of what psychology is. We've got Pinky in the Brain, and where Pinky has a limited attention span, and that is kind of like the key jokes of the series. Once again, played as a bit of the dim-witted one, and is always a liability. You'll notice that he also looks a little bit like Goofy, who also has a lot of ADHD traits. So they do tend to make it the kind of comic relief character. Deadpool. Deadpool does in the TV show. There's a little bit of a loophole here, but I think he shows a lot of traits, how his brain is quickly darting in between all of them, and also a slight little bit of insanity. If the characters aren't dim-witted, they tend to be slightly scatty or have a bit of insanity to them. Oh, yes, April says, I think Goofy has dyspraxia as well. Yeah, one we did on dyspraxia, I think definitely Goofy is a class act for that. Yeah, Rita says unhinged as well. We're starting to see this trope. We're building a very basic image that you've got to be male, maybe slightly dim, very scatty, bit unhinged, difficult to maintain concentration. We know there's way, way more to this. But this isn't the representation that we want to see. There are some shows which are a lot smarter. Admittedly, they are much more recent, such as South Park. Now, I love South Park. It doesn't hold back. It offends everyone. And they did an episode called Timmy 2000, where they played on the idea that everyone has ADHD now. We know that's not true, but we do know, particularly in the US where this is based, is that there has been an over-reliance of medication. I'm not saying that medication isn't useful for those with ADHD, but I'm saying more children get it than actually need it in some areas. I think because a lot of the characteristics we associate with it are so universal and generic, if people think it is purely one thing, then it's very easy for everyone to relate to it, where we're not giving it enough nuance that it deserves, which can mislead people. You do not want to be on Ritalin if you don't need it. Lexi says that's why I found Deadpool the best Marvel character. He just comes across more real and authentic. Oh, I also agree. Not a question, but thank you. I've just had an epiphany about myself. Oh, I'd love to know what the epiphany is. When I think of epiphanies, I always think of that moment in the Simpsons movie where that Native American is kind of like in like Homer's mouth. If you know, you know. Moving nicely on, Sesame Street. Is this a stretch? Is Elmo a nod to ADHD? Hey, I'm Elmo. Elmo likes to sit. He's a bit like Deadpool, isn't he? He's often breaking the fourth wall. He's often engaging with people. You'll notice that back in the day, no character was officially diagnosed. I think in Sesame Street, I know they have an autistic character.
Julia.
Yeah, Julia is the autism one. It seems that you had to look between. However, Elmo, is he also 3 years old? I'm pretty certain he's like a baby. We often can contribute tax of being a child to ADHD. LaDonna says no ADHD characters officially. I'm thinking they'll probably change that soon. Vicky says, to me, he's a bit young to really say a lot, and toddlers can look like ADHD. And to me, he's a toddler. Yeah, I think officially he is a toddler. I think in this particular image, he's like a proper baby, because this is like baby Muppets or baby Sesame Streets. Rita says, I always thought Ernie was ADHD and Bernie autistic. Do you know what? I do see that as well. He's a 4-year-old on the show. Aww. Oh, he's also dyspraxic. While at the moment, let's face it, we're clutching at straws here. We're making things up. They have it, they have it, they have it. But we do not know. But why do shows explicitly avoid giving characters label? I've got 3 answers here. You can pick which one you think is the biggest reason and which one you think is the least of a reason. But if there are reasons I've not even mentioned, do let me know. Maybe it's complexity. Let's face it, explaining what something really is takes up precious time. A show might only have a 25-minute runtime. Do we really have enough time to break it down, explain it, and give it the time and energy it deserves? No, typically we rely on stereotypes in order for quick gags. Then we've got fear of backlash. Let's face it, people are scared. They tread on eggshells. If you don't mention it by name, it's easy to say that's your interpretation. But the second you mention it, for instance, when characters have been said, oh, right, this is an autistic character like Julia from Sesame Street, while a lot of people loved it, equally, a lot of people did not like it. So that could also be a thing. Laziness, maybe there is some laziness into it. I think mostly it comes down to, is it going to be funny? Because shows that tend to be short, sweet, and snappy typically have an element of comedy in them, which don't really allow for characters to have a fully fledged personality. I think sometimes people write a character with certain traits, but don't necessarily know they're writing an ND character. I would say so too. Are these writers knowingly have an ND character in their head, or are they just writing a character they think funny and then we attribute the characteristics to after? That is something that unless you do a lot of research, you're probably not going to know. But I do know in lots of interviews with showrunners, when people have asked them, hey, is your character XXX? They'll say, no, they're not. That wasn't my intention. Again, maybe they are just trying to avoid backlash, or maybe they didn't actually think about it. Lexi says they're made up characters, so it's hard to determine exactly what their individual experiences are. Plus, there's a massive overlap in symptoms, which are shared amongst most neurodivergent conditions. That's another thing that shows do. They want it to appeal to as many people as they possibly can. Why would they want to limit it with something which may only resonate with 1 or 2 people? It's why when you look at characters, they might not always mention their ethnicity because they want it to be a little bit ambiguous. Is it like Raya the Dragon? But it's a Disney movie where it's set in Asia. It doesn't say where because they want it to appeal to as many people. Or The Simpsons. They're called The Simpsons because it's the most common name in America, or was at the time. They want it to appeal to as many people. They live in Springfield because it's the most common name in America, because they want it to appeal to most people. By the time we start labeling things, we start cutting it off. It's also the reason they use quite generic names for the most half. Oh yes, Verity says it is Raya the Dragon. You know, I didn't love the film. For your Whovians, let's look at Doctor Who. I would argue that most of the doctors do have ADHD traits, but probably no more so than the 13th Doctor, Judy Whittaker. Not my favourite doctor by any means, but I do think that she showed the more one-dimensional than the others. She is socially awkward. She does go off on a tangent. She does have that childhood excitement and is easily overwhelmed. So in many ways, maybe a bit more fully fledged. Can Time Lords have ADHD? I don't know, but admittedly, if they can have two hearts, they can probably have multiple conditions. But please do let me know if you think, yep, this is what they had in mind. When they are writing for this character, they probably do have a character profile. Do you think that they have someone in their head who they know to have ADHD that they are basing their character off of? Or it's not even crossing their mind? How much credit are we giving these writers? April says there's a running gag in The Simpsons about the mystery where Springfield is. Yeah, I know people have been trying to solve that mystery forever. As we are slowly moving on to more progressive ways and more helpful and beneficial ways of how ADHD is depicted on television, I want to ask you, have there been any shows or characters that have actually helped you understand ADHD better rather than just build upon pre-held ideas or myths? To give you one example, we've got Ty Pennington. He did lots of construction shows, mostly in America. I don't think he's in the UK that much, but he often talks about ADHD. While not being his sole characteristic, it is something which has influenced him to where he is today. Okay, we got Trevor Noah. Oh yes, I can see that. Gilmore Girls. I didn't learn from TV. Probably for the best. It's far and few between. Okay, we've got Gilmore Girls. Definitely made me embrace my crazy Russian unique self. I like that. I sometimes wonder if the directors or writers have ADHD or autism themselves, hence the traits being shown through the characters. They help them write in certain ways to help others feel seen. Do you know what, Lexi? I could see that as well. That even if it's unintentional, they are relaying the more outlandish, characteristic, cartoony parts of themselves. We got, Howie Mandel. Yep, I see that. Jack Russell in Bluey. Oh, Dan Harmon shows. Yeah, I think his shows are really great for showing ND characteristics. And while they are slightly exaggerated, they're also quite endearing. They do exist. Jess from New Girl. Yeah, I could see her having inattentive ADHD, maybe even a bit of hyperactive. What should kids learn about ADHD from TV? We talked about bad representations, subtle representations, the good ones. When we are creating shows, what should we show? Is it okay to make these jokes and not think twice about it? Or should they be completely educational? Can we still have that kind of fun element to it? A little bit of quirkiness. We got tolerance, nice understanding and acceptance. Oh, Damon says apparently Springfield, Vermont won the Simpsons premiere. Cool. ND is normal. Yep, normalizing it. Education can be fun. Strengths and skills. Personally, I don't think there's anything wrong with having the odd joke every now and then, but it has to be done tactfully. For instance, laughing with them rather than them. If they show one element, they have to counteract it with a more positive one, particularly in children's shows. April says, although there was an episode of Arthur where George is diagnosed with dyslexia, he also shows ADHD traits in this episode. If we are going into even more detail, because we like detail, what about really nuanced portrayals? This guy from Atypical, isn't he autistic? Yes, he is. However, it's a great example of how a show can depict a neurodivergent individual with layers, like an onion. Lots of different ways of explaining who he is as a person. I wasn't able to find a equivalent ADHD example, so I thought maybe we can use that as a starting point. But could there be a character with ADHD which is similar to Atypical? Oh, Marie says, I'm a writer and producer and director. Oh, look at you, write the theme tune, sing the theme tune. My experience, and I don't know how else to write my films. As a disabled lead, I'm writing a comedy and I'm doing stand-up. I'm autistic and ADHD. When you say experts, I'm including expert by experience here. Consulting experts for accurate portrayals. But then again, what is an expert? It's someone who has a level of knowledge in an area. But maybe, I think the key word here is experts with an S. So you're not just referring to one individual, you are seeking many different opinions in order to make an accurate way. Let's move on to cultural factors. I want to know how you think that, depending on what culture the media is created, how it would affect the different views of ADHD. For an example, I want to clarify, I have not seen this show. This character has a lot of ADHD traits, but different to a Western view of ADHD, his is more of the kind of big eyes in all amazement. You know, those people who are jumping up really excited and lots of energy, which is in contrast to the Western way of depicting ADHD as that kind of rebellious, naughty kid. Maybe different countries will depict it in different ways, which can have positives and negatives. There are no such thing as an expert. We are all different. I think I prefer the word specialist, to be honest, Marie, because you can specialize in something. Doesn't necessarily mean you know what you're talking about, but you can still specialize. I have learned a lot about various conditions, about being a neurotypical myself. I'd never call myself an expert as I don't have lived experience. Big Bang Theory resulted from discussions that were held. You know what? Big Bang Theory, while typically mostly looks like autism, they also don't explicitly mention it. Okay, we've got acceptance. Anyone else for these? Any of you who maybe aren't from the UK or America, have your shows depicted ADHD in a different way to how conventional Western media does? I watched it as a kid. It's good. I'm very aware of cultural differences. In Portugal, arriving within 15 minutes of a starting time is considered on time. Yep, that is a really good point there. I often use autism as an example. For instance, if you aren't making eye contact, maybe that's seen as an autistic trait, but say in Japan, that's seen as a level of respect. With ADHD, maybe turning up late is a ADHD characteristic, but in another country like Portugal, that's just when people turn up. Some cultures shame disabilities, meaning they'll often consider ND to be shameful, unfortunately so. Social norms is the cultural aspect, what is considered a negative trait. That is the thing, it's not always positive. You will notice that shows like ones in Japan very rarely ever mention anything by name. However, they do show different traits. So I still think it's worth seeing some of them. Oh, I like Specialist too. Yep. Oh, I'm glad you like that, Sarah. Oh, everyone's loving Specialist, which is nice. This character does not have good grades in school, seen as a bad part. Interesting. Like I said, I've not seen the show myself. I've only seen small little clips, but what I'm reading here is still not overly positive. Systems in countries might mean different diagnostic pathways. Yep. Not everyone uses the DSM or the ICD. There are different ways. Not everyone's understanding of ADHD is overly consistent. As we know, depending on where you are in the world, there are different caricatures, tropes, stigmas related to ADHD. 4 of the most common ones are the absent-minded professor, someone who's always a little bit heads in the cloud. They're clearly smart, but you no idea what they're thinking. It could be Professor Frink from The Simpsons, Professor Farnsworth from Futurama, many types. Or it could be the forgetful Jones, someone who is your kind of typical average day person who is just very forgetful. I put Creed here from The Office because his colleagues who he has worked with for 15 years, he forgets their names. And that is a classic ADHD trait where it's lodged in the brain somewhere, but hard to bring to the surface. Then you've got the Cloud Cockaloo-lander, which is a fun name. And these are people who key characteristic is very quirky and in their own world, in their own space. It's similar to the absent-minded professor, but where one is very intentional in what they're doing, the other one is opaque. Then you've got the easily impressed child, which is similar to the cartoon I just showed you. For this example, we've got Kat Valentine from Victorious, who we now know to be Ariana Grande. That is the kind of continuously impressed and amazed. It's like they are trapped in an infant's body. That's why I mentioned Elmo as potentially ADHD, because I feel a lot of adult characters have the same awe and wonder of little Elmo. Oh, Vicky says, my daughter loves Luna Lovegood, as she can relate to her. Nice. Slits from Teen Wolf had ADHD characters. Interesting. Jesus from the Fosters was an ADHD character. Cool. I haven't seen that. But you can see there are tropes. Why can't we have one character which is an amalgamation of all of them together, but we typically slice and dice them? On one hand, I get it. Cartoons are easy to understand when characters are one-dimensional, but no one's like that. Last night, I was watching a cartoon from the 60s. It's terrible, by the way, but it's the Beatles cartoon. Not Yellow Submarine, but a classic one. All of their accents are American, and they do not sound like the Beatles. But Ringo's a dumb one. John is a smart one. We've got the empathetic one. And they trivialize their characters so much when actually they're real people. There's more to them than that. Oh, Verity says she's a bit of all four of them. April says there was a character in Sesame Street called Forgetful Jones. Can't remember why he is happy. Oh God, that's depressing. Percy Jackson is a fictional ADHD character. Yep, great example. He also has dyslexia, doesn't he? What do you think we could do to get better representation of ADHD? We got lots of examples. I know some of you are writers and producers. What do you reckon we should give to young budding writers and show creators? How can they create better representation while also not sacrificing the kind of artistic intention that they're going for? I do not want to make shows completely boring and dull without any humour, but is there a way of still having those kind of quick wins and jokes and one-liners without completely plummeting people's views of us? Bring more writers who are neurodiverse? Yes, Maria, that is a great example. ADHD diagnosed consultants. Interesting that you mentioned diagnosed there. People who actually are a range of specialists. It needs to be balanced. Absolutely. We're showing the spiky profile. I mean, if we only show the strengths, we're creating like Superman characters. We want to know ups and downs. Otherwise, we're just shifting the scale to another direction. Research and awareness. Talk to those with ADHD. Brilliant. Maybe round tables, different consultancy groups, focus groups of stories. Yes. Access coordinators to film and TV sites. Yeah, I think that could be really good. I know they have coordinators for a lot of different things now. I was watching that they have essentially sex consultancies where they help people do it because it's awkward. Maybe they could also have an ADHD one. Okay, so you're going to be an ADHD character. This is how you might do it, or this is how you might portray it. Yeah, thanks, Emma. That's a much nicer way of saying it. Intimacy coordinator. Much better than my way of saying it. Some best practice, I think, to name ADHD explicitly. We've got to normalize it. Stop hiding behind the shadows. Say it. If you're worried about backlash, it might mean that you haven't had enough consultation. I think as long as you can explain, like they did in Sesame Street, hey, this is autism for Julia. Might not be for you, but this is what it's like for her. If they did that same thing for ADHD, I don't think many people will be offended, as long as you show a variety of different people. Coping strategies, maybe you might also want to depict ways that people are supported via it. Rather than just, haha, look at them joke, you also see different dimensions of them. Balanced humour. I'm not saying we take away all the gags, because let's face it, being neurodivergent can be funny sometimes. I'm always making fun of myself, and I think that's fine. But you've got to have that balance. Also having accuracy, not just saying, oh, they're hyperactive, but also saying, actually, you could be inattentive. Maybe some days it may affect you, other days it may not. Maria says consultants who are neurodiverse will understand of supporting writers who are neurodiverse with mental health creativity. Yes, it could have multiple benefits. Allow people with ADHD to share their experiences of living with ADHD. Thanks, April. Really great ideas. Whew. All right, we covered a lot again. Now, if any of you want to know where I got all these crazy stats from, they're all from real, legit places. You can check out all our references. No one will, but at least research was done. I always have to mention workplace needs assessments. And also next year is our 10th anniversary as a company. Woo! I've somehow ended up with a job of party planning committee, and I have no idea what we're going to do. If any of you have some quick ideas on what you would like to see, maybe different events, maybe face-to-face things, socials, you let me know. Because we want to celebrate the occasion. We just need to think of some fun ideas. Okay, can I come? Absolutely, Madonna. We're a little bit far away, but if you can get across, we'd love to have you. A party near your house, Nat. I'll see if I can have a party here, but more the merrier. Oh, I come to London once a year. Let us know when you do, and we can definitely create a bit of a social. A bouncy castle. I'd have that. Maybe just more informal meetings. Yeah, we would love to do that. The difficulty is, because we have people all over, it's about finding somewhere which is inclusive for everyone. But I guess London makes the most sense because it's like the centre for travel, not of the country. Thanks very much, presentation. All right, no worries. We'll come up with ideas. If you do want to watch our previous ones, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel where they are uploaded. You can also contact me. You can add me on LinkedIn and stay in contact. You can submit your feedback and tell us how much you loved these sessions or didn't love them, but hopefully you did. You can drop me an email if you have any follow-up questions. As always, I hope you enjoyed today, got something out of it, and thank you so much for attending. Catch you soon. Cool. Thanks everyone for the lovely comments and feedback.